Hi guys, so we've been looking at ways to graph lines. Today we're going to take a look at equations of lines and the different forms we can write it in. So slope, y-intercept form, and standard form we're going to take a look at today. So in y-intercept form that we worked with when we were graphing, we used the slope and the y-intercept to help graph lines. And a form that's not as helpful to us, but it's another form that we often write equations of lines in, is standard form. And the deal with standard form is that all of the terms are on one side of the equal sign equal to 0. The value of a, which is the number in front of the x, has to be a positive value. And when we have an equation in standard form, none of the numbers can be fractions. So that's just something to keep in mind with those two forms of the equation. So example 1 here, we're going to change an equation that's in standard form into slope y-intercept form. So we need to isolate the variable. The first step that we're going to take to isolate the variable is we're going to move the x term and the constant term away from the y term. So to isolate the y term, we need to move these two terms to the other side of the equal sign. And remember, when we do that first step where we're moving things to the opposite side of the equal sign, we're doing the opposite operation. So the plus x changed to a minus 2x, and the minus 16 changes to a positive 16. Okay? So that first step helps us to get to our goal, which is to isolate the variable. And the last thing we need to do is divide by the coefficient of the y. So the number that's in front of the y is 4. We're going to move that 4 to the other side of the equal sign, and we'll divide the 4. And that 4 divides into each term on the other side. So the first term is going to be negative 2x divided by 4. And if I write that in lowest terms, it's going to be negative 1/2 x. And then I have plus 16 divided by 4, so that's going to give me plus 4. So there is my equation in y-intercept form. And you can see we've got our slope for this line is negative 1/2, and our y-intercept is equal to 4. Example 2, we're going to go from y-intercept form to standard form. So now we're going to go in the opposite direction. And our first step here is that you see we have a fraction there. We really need to get rid of the fraction. So to get rid of the fraction, we're going to multiply every term by a common denominator. So for 4 and 6, the lowest common denominator would be 12. So I'm going to multiply the y by 12. That's one term. I'll multiply the negative 3/4 x by 12, and I'll multiply the 5/6 by 12. And when I deal with that, 12 times y is just going to be 12y. The reason that I'm multiplying by this number is to get rid of the fraction. So 4 divides into 12 3 times. That's going to give me 3 times negative 3x. It's going to give me negative 9x. And then 6 goes into 12 2 times. So 2 times 5 is going to give me 10. All right, then I'm going to move the 12y to the other side. Remember, when it's in standard form, the x term comes first, then the y term, and then the constant term. So all I did there was move the 12y to the other side and changed it to minus 12y. So that was my second step, is to rearrange to get one side 0 and the terms in order on the other side, x, y, then constant. Now, we've got a little bit of an issue here because it's not really in standard form because we've got a negative in front of the a value, which is the number in front of the x. So I'm going to multiply every term by -1. 0 times -1 is 0. -9 times -1 is 9. And when we multiply by -1, all it really does is change the sign of each term. So you can see that's what happens there, and that's what the equation looks like in standard form. So now we're going to take a look at this example here, where we're trying to find the equations of lines given some information. So we're going to use y equals mx plus b to find the y-intercept of a line that has a slope of 6 and passes through 1, 3. So I'm going to write down y equals mx plus b because that's what I'm using to help find this. And here's what I know right now. If the slope is 6, that means that m equals 6. And whenever you're given a point, these numbers represent an x and a y that are on that line. So I'm going to plug those three things into those three spots. So y is going to be 3, m is going to be 6, x is going to be 1, and I'm trying to figure out what b is. So I multiply 1 times 6, I get 6. I take it to the other side and subtract it, so I get b equals -3. So now I've got the y-intercept, and I've got the slope, so I can write the equation of a line, because in y equals mx plus b, 6 is my m, and 3 is my b. Now, they want me to write it in standard form. So to write this in standard form, all I have to do is move the y to the other side, and it changes to -y, and it's going to be in the second term spot. So that's the equation of the line. It has that slope and passes through that point, and it's written in standard form. A different way to get the equation of a line in standard form, if we know the slope and point, is to use the slope point formula for the equation of a line. So I'm going to write down that equation from up above, and we'll see how we actually use this. The point that we're given represents the x1 and the y1 in this formula. And the slope still goes in for m. So if I plug those three values in again, just like I did up above, but it's a different formula slightly here, it's going to be y minus 3, m is 6, x minus 1 goes there. And then I need to simplify this and write it in standard form. So y minus 3 is fine as it is. I need to distribute the 6. So I multiply the 6 inside the bracket, and then to write it in standard form, I bring the y over, it becomes minus y. I bring the minus 3 over, it becomes plus 3. And then when I simplify the minus 6 plus 3 on the end, I get the same answer I got up above, 6x minus y minus 3 equals 0. Okay, example 3. So here we're going to find the equation using slope and a point, but the slope is a fraction. So I'm going to do the exact same thing I just did. I'll write down my formula, and I'll plug in what I've got. So y1 is 3. This time my slope is a fraction, but that's going to be okay. Now here I've got x, and I'm going to be subtracting -2. So when I subtract a negative, that becomes a positive. All right? Now, I don't like the fraction here, so if I move the 5 to the other side of the equation, it changes from divide to multiply. So it's actually going to look like that. Now I need to use my distributive property to get rid of the brackets, and then I will collect the like terms and write it in standard form. So this is going to be 2x minus 5y plus 4 plus 3. And I made a mistake. Oh no! I'm not going too fast. I'm a little excited there. So let me fix this. This is going to be a minus 15. And this will be a plus 15. Write it in a different color to represent the mistake I made. And when I clean everything up, it's going to look like 2x minus 5y plus 19 equals 0, and that's in standard form. Last example we're going to do. In this one, we're finding the equation of a line in standard form, just like we've done in the questions up above. But here, very sad, we don't know the slope. So that means before we do anything else, we have to find the slope. So hopefully you remember your slope formula from math last year. What's x2 minus x1. So if I plug these in, x1 and y1, x2 and y2. If I plug those in, it's going to be negative 2 subtract 7 in the numerator, and 6 subtract negative 3, so 6 plus 3 in the denominator. So we end up with m equals negative 1. So now I'm going to use m equals negative 1 and a point. It doesn't matter which of those 2 points I use. If one point was only positives or had smaller numbers, you could choose that. These are both pretty equal as far as difficulty goes. So I'll just choose that point there. And remember that that's going to be my x1 and my y1. I'll write down our formula for the equation when we got a point and slope. I'll plug in what I have. Watch your sign on the 3 there. That's going to be negative x minus 3. I can bring everything over to that side. And you can see we've got that issue where the number in front of the x is negative. So if I multiply everything by negative 1, then I'm going to get 0 equals, and the sign changes of each term, so I end up with x plus y minus 4 equals 0. Thank you. See you tomorrow.